My name is Dave Adderhold. I'm the school superintendent, and it's a pleasure to be joining you this evening on a very difficult discussion, very difficult topic. I greatly appreciate that you took the time to be here. And so as we talk about tonight, we thought it might be beneficial for some because there's questions that we all sit with that we reached out to our colleagues at law enforcement, and we asked Plainsboro Police and Chief Blanchard to come out and just give a couple words about the overall investigation and what he's able to share. And just, I think one thing we have to all be cognizant of is there's certain information that we're never going to be privy to. There's certain questions that we're never going to have answers to. So the chief is bound by certain guidelines and rules of what he's allowed to share. But we want to also reassure you of certain aspects of concerns that I've heard in the community. So Chief Blanchard.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Superintendent, for the introduction. As he said, I'm Chief Blanchard with Plainsboro Police, and tonight I'd just like to address some of the concerns that I have received through the community via message or phone call or from some of our public meetings. It was a very, very heartbreaking event for the community. Very difficult for the community and for our officers who conducted the investigation, but as you know, we're very resilient and we're going to get through it, and we're working with you, everyone in the community, as a team. And as a team, I think we're going to be able to get through this, help each other get through this, and really just, push forward. I'd like to provide everybody with the why tonight, but unfortunately I can't. What I can do is reassure everyone that there is no threat to the greater community. This was an isolated incident that took place in the confines of that property. And while the investigation is ongoing, I know sometimes that can frighten people. They say, okay, what's left to investigate? There is truly nothing left to investigate except for some finer points that we need to clear up. But as far as the action that occurred, it was specifically confined to that residence. There is no threat to the greater community. We continue to investigate it, but again, there's nothing truly left to investigate except for a few points. What we ask of you all, and just to spread the message to your neighbors and friends, is that you should feel confident in the safety of your community, of Plainsboro, of West Windsor as well, because I know some of you live in West Windsor, and again, your surrounding communities. Some people here from Princeton tonight as well. So just understand that there definitely is no threat. I can't emphasize that enough. So to put your mind at ease. In terms of the how, unfortunately, we can't get into that as well. Eventually, we'll be able to put out a press release in conjunction with the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office, and we'll be able to answer more questions. Just to let you know, every second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. in Plainsboro at the Municipal Center, I hold it's a coffee with the chief or just a meeting with the chief where you can come ask me questions specific about any topic you have, any concerns. We can get into a little bit more, but tonight is just a night for us to listen to the wonderful words of our speaker and just move forward and try to heal as best we can as a community. You have my contact information, which is on the website. Any questions or concerns you have additionally, I'll do my best to answer them, not just about this, but any other concerns you have regarding the safety of the community. And I ask all of you to work with us as we work with you as a team, as partners in keeping the community safe and moving forward in the best way we possibly can. So thank you for having me tonight, and I wish you all the best of luck, and any questions you may have, please feel free to email me. Thank you.
And just by way of introduction, the gentleman to my left, your right, is also Sergeant McElrath. Sergeant McElrath works with Plainsboro PD as well. Many of you know that we have a Class 3 program here in district. We have officers at all of our schools. You may have seen Officer Jay here tonight, works the evenings at High School North, and Officer McElrath, Sergeant McElrath, oversees that program here in Plainsboro. We have a different responding officer over in West Windsor. So with respect to tonight, obviously we're here under terrible, tragic circumstances. And just from a district perspective, I wanted just to address really quickly the crisis response. So the community has a sense of some of the work that we do. We've been here 15 years, and during that time we've had several tragedies. And there was immediately in 2009-10 we lost 2 students and a staff member in about an 18-month period. And we really reflected and said we felt very ill prepared. In reflection, we felt like we handled it in the moment, but we could have done things differently. And we brought together a group of counselors and clinicians and psychologists, and we reached out to the Traumatic Loss Coalition. There is a Traumatic Loss Coalition in every county in New Jersey. It's something that was state-sponsored and state-funded, so there's a state network of counselors and clinicians that work together to support communities in tragedy. Dr. McDonald and myself were on that early committee, and we worked together to put together a district traumatic loss plan so that we could be prepared to walk into situations and then adjust the plan based on the circumstances that we were facing. And every single tragedy is different and requires a different response based on the circumstances, based on the age of the children, based on the staff, based on the buildings impacted. But we have building-based crisis teams, we have a district crisis team, and there are representative groups of faculty and staff and administration on those teams. And to that end, I want to just recognize the tremendous work that both Wyckoff and Millstone River staffs did in the immediate response and in the aftermath of this tragedy. And it's still an unfolding process in our schools as our children continue to process, and quite frankly, our staff continues to process. I want to thank Dr. McDonald and Dr. Gould that are here today with us for their support and their immediate actions that evening and subsequently since. Lee McDonald is our Deputy Superintendent of Schools, and Dr. Gould, our Chief Academic Officer, was our Director of Counseling, Health, and Wellness up until this year. And then by way of introduction to the community, joining us for week 2, day 8 or 9, Jessica Smedley, our new Director of Counseling, a veteran counselor, Director of Counseling. We're very fortunate to have her in district, but Jessica has just joined us recently. And then I want to say, thank you to the administrative and leadership teams that joined us that evening, both Gerard Dalton and Maureen Cook and their teams, and then the counselors and crisis support. And then this was a unique circumstance in that our crisis team had to be split across 2 buildings. So we also had tremendous support from the greater school community. Counselors and administrators from throughout the district provided support as we needed to make sure that we could support both Wyckoff and Millstone River and the different needs based on the different ages of the children that were learning of the loss of their friend. So then when it comes to thinking about tonight and tonight's presentation and making sure we offered something for the greater community, as we talked, it was very clear that there was really only one individual that could be here if available, and that's our guest speaker, George Scott. For those of us that have worked with George and known George as a colleague, as a mentor, as a friend, there's no better person to speak to in crisis and tragedy. There's no greater calm on the other line of the phone. There's no greater guidance. He is the statewide coordinator for Traumatic Loss Coalition. He's been a counselor. He's been a director of counseling for South Brunswick. He runs a private family therapy group. He's been a beloved professor. If there's a family or child in need, there's no one I can think better than to engage them and connect them to George Scott. So it's my great pleasure this evening to bring George in front of you this evening to talk about how we can help think through healing from tragedy, and how we can help our community think how we move forward from such tragic loss. So, George.
Now what? That's it, right? Because this is about, the conversation tonight is about you in the room, the survivors of this tragedy. The water over here is for you as well, because sometimes it's really important for us to sip water, grab a tissue, because it could get emotional. That's why you're here. That's what got you out of your homes tonight, because it's one of those, fortunately, unusual circumstances within a community that leaves behind suffering. And I say that word quite easily. It's about your suffering. I also know, simply by my experience with moms and dads, is you're here out of fear. You're here out of fear for the safety of your own children. What do I say? Did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? What do I do now? How do I answer those questions? Because we're in a period of time of recovery. We're in a period of time of healing. And if we do it well, and my guess is we will do it well. When we do it well, our children take it as a life experience, but it's not disruptive. And that's what we want to make sure. We want to make sure for our babies, whether they're in preschool or high school, they're all our babies. We want to make sure that we have conversations with them, we're open with them, they have others to go to in addition to us as moms and dads. That makes the community healthier. So I've got some things that I want to just comment about. At any time, there can be a hand. I'll entertain a comment. I'll entertain a question. Because my goal in talking with Dr. Adderhold is that when you leave here tonight, you feel better about who you are as a mom or dad. You feel better about what you can do for your children. You feel better about your connection to the school district. And the only way we can do that is for you to dig deep into your heart, into your fears and worries, in order to, if you're comfortable, raise the issue publicly. Now, I can also tell you this, for those of you that might be a bit shy to do that, I'll linger afterwards. If you have a personal question about your personal child, I'll try to address that. So we're going to give you lots of opportunity tonight to reflect, to bring your heartache, to bring your worry, to bring your tears to this conversation about how do we recover from such a tragedy. Sometimes people want gatherings like this immediately following the tragedy, and I understand the vigilance of that. You hug each other, you cry with each other, you share with each other, what are we going to do? How did this happen? That those stages have already happened, and what I can assure you is your own family rituals around death helped. You all have them. Whether they're driven by your religion, whether they're driven by your culture, whether they're driven simply because it's a part of how your family has always managed sorrow, that's critically important for you. Your children will be well if I can help you be well. Let me let that hang in the air. What we know is our babies do better when we do better. That if we need to seek help, we should seek it, because when we do, we're able to turn around and give it to our kids. So one of the things that I appreciate is the bit of a delay between tragedy and tonight, because it helps you to get through the process of grieving, at least get into the process of grieving. Some of you, it may linger longer. That may be personal for your family. It may be personal because you have a relationship with the Singh family, with the children, with the parents. There's lots of reasons why grief lingers. And the other thing I want to suggest and say to each of you is, if you're still grieving from your own things unrelated to this incident, loss of a parent, coming out of COVID, illness, a sick parent, when you have your own, this just seems to tag onto it and extend the grieving. That's a normal human reaction. That doesn't mean you're crazy. That doesn't mean something's wrong. What it means is each of you have a different story. Even within the same family, you each have a different story. So the events here are going to affect you a bit differently. There are things, let's talk about your kids. I think all of us can agree that because of the time in which we live, our kids get exposed to things that we don't want them to be exposed to. Whether they hear it somewhere else, whether they overhear a family conversation about it, whether it's a social media. What we know is sometimes our children have information that they're not able to manage. So how would you know? Well, we know because kids tell us how they're doing one of two ways. Some of your children will come to you and they will tell you what their worry is. And for some, you got to read their behavior, because their behavior also tells us how well they're doing or how well they're not. So let's go through some things that you do have control over. Your family is inside of your home, and here are the things you can influence. Number one is sleep, for you and for your babies. Now, think back to just a week or two ago. As the incident was unfolding, your sleep was probably highly disrupted. You couldn't settle. You couldn't get to sleep or stay asleep. That may have been the same for your children, and maybe now it's better. If it's not better, I encourage you to pay attention to that. Your sleep is critically important to your emotional health and your physical health, and that's the same way for your kids. Sleep is important. The other one is we look at regressive behavior. If you've noticed in your children that they're behaving much younger now, you see this in our elementary kids. They will regress and they'll be a little bit whiny, a little bit clingy. They don't want to leave your sight, they're afraid. That's a typical reaction too to traumatic events. When you reassure, when you comfort, when you soothe them, they will, because they're overall healthy kids, they're going to regain their age-appropriate emotional reactions to things. So take a look at regression. Don't be scared by it. And give them the soothing attention that they need. Our children need that. They need to know we're okay, and if we're okay, they're going to be better about that. I also want to talk to you about the issue of how do we talk to our kids about this? Here's a good rule of thumb. Don't give them a lot of information unless they ask for it. Let them ask. Because if not, you're imposing a lot of information, and maybe scary information and emotional information that they don't need it. So I want to prevent you from overwhelming your kids with too much information. But if they ask questions, now let's talk about what do we do with the questions. It should always be at an appropriate age language. You're going to talk to your high school kids differently than your elementary kids. They can handle that. Their systems have matured. They're trying to figure things out. Usually our elementary kids, they're not trying to figure things out unless we create some unsettledness around them. So appropriate language. And there's appropriate language. Let's talk specifically about what all of you as a community have suffered through. It's okay for you to say to your children, you too are sad. That's okay to do that. They're going to see it. They see your tears, maybe still. They see you're more quiet, maybe still. Maybe also, though, you're also more irritable. I'm not suggesting anybody in the room is cranky and irritable, but irritability is a thing that comes with being unsettled in our emotions. So you can allow your kids to see the real you. Now, here's a caveat, however. If your reaction is to be overwhelmed and melted down, try to protect your kids from that. It's called buffering. We don't want them to see that scares them more and what they can't figure out on their own. So we're trying to do a balance here between what they need to know and perhaps what you think they need to know. Wait until they ask questions about that. Some parents have said to me, I told my children X, Y, and Z, that I do the right thing. Typically, parents do the right thing. You know your kids best, you're the expert on your children. Typically, that's true. However, if you misstepped, if you were caught off guard, if you weren't quite sure what language to use, then it may be necessary, if you cause confusion, to go back and clarify things. For instance, I think it's really important if your children ask that they know that the family died. That's important. It's straightforward. And that's really sad, you can say. Straightforward. Now, I'm picking up on what Chief mentioned earlier, right? So that there are sometimes rumors out there. And the best that you can, we need to protect our kids from the rumors. We need to be able to tell them the truth without overwhelming them and upsetting them and scaring them more. And I'm probably going to get some questions from some of you about that, and I'm fine. You ask your question and we'll help you massage the language about that. If you think now after the fact you misled the children, here's the problem with that. The problem with misleading them, and it's probably because you were uncomfortable, you didn't really know what to say, you didn't know the language to use. So you created the story of why either of the children, either Ayush or Amy, were not in school anymore. You may have made up a story because you weren't quite sure what to do. The problem with that is they're likely to hear from somebody else a different story. That creates a conflict for them. And here's what you do not want to do. You do not want your children to doubt you and not trust you. Because in their little minds, they will say, but if you aren't truthful about that, what else are you not truthful about? So we want to get as close to the truth as we can, that we can tolerate telling in a way that they can be satisfied. You soothe them, and then life will go on, and they'll put it somewhere appropriate. So for instance, there have been times, not this incident, other incidents, in which the parents will say, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so died of a heart attack, which is not true. Because you didn't know what to say. And in the moment, it satisfied your kid. But now it comes back that they died in an auto accident, or perhaps it was a suicide death. Now you're caught in terms of how do you make that right? You can make it right. And you make it right by suggesting to your kids, I really was stuck. I didn't know what to say. I was so overwhelmed by Mr. So-and-so's death. I was trying to protect you from that, but it's true. He took his own life. He had this brain illness that made him take his own life. He didn't die of a heart attack. Clean it up. Get that relationship back on board with your children so that they again can trust you. There is no more important adult in the life of a kid than mom or dad. You're all powerful. You're everything. So what we want to make sure is we're as honest as we can without overwhelming the kids. Rumors. Mentioned that earlier. You will hear, or they will come to you and say, I heard in school, or I read online, or so-and-so said to me on the bus. If you know that rumor is not true, you need to say, I checked it out, that's not true. Don't believe that. Right now, what we can believe is this, don't believe that. We got to extinguish those rumors because they can become insidiously destructive. Don't even offer an explanation of maybe that's true. If you know it's not true, say it's not true. If you're not sure, then you can say, I didn't hear that, but I'm going to make a phone call. I'm going to check it out because I want you to know for sure. So you're riding this line of holding on to your own emotions and being honest and open with your children about things like that. Because of the nature of this tragedy, of these deaths, what I wouldn't want is your fear to become your kids' fear, because it will happen. They're going to borrow that emotion from you if, in fact, your fear, which is why we're so glad that Chief was here tonight, to reassure you that isolated to that property, there's nothing rampant going on in your community. Your community is safe, your children are safe, and you're safe. Your kids need to hear that from you. It was a terrible thing, but we're good. The teachers and I have talked. Everything is okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. You stay close to me, or I will look out for you, or I'll walk to the bus stop with you, whatever you feel you need to do, but please don't make your fears their fears. That's an adult fear that you're putting on top of a child. If, and I'll say this as sensitively, with as much sensitivity as I can, there are some of us that are not well emotionally. We're stressed. We may have high anxiety. Some of us might have depression, right? They are normal, typical human conditions, which makes you more vulnerable to information. So if you need to seek more comfort yourself, if you need a go-to person, if you don't already have that, you can always check in with the school. You can say, I'm more worried. This is what's going on at my house. Your school counselors, and some of them are here, are always willing to accept those conversations to give you the support. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. I'm a resident of Mercer County, but I would be remiss. The reason you're here tonight is because it was a community tragedy. It wasn't a school tragedy, with the exception of those two babies attended school here. It's a community tragedy. And yet, the leadership of this school district said, our moms and dads need an opportunity to hear and talk and question and listen. That doesn't happen everywhere I go. And I go through districts throughout the state of New Jersey in my work. Sometimes they'll just shut down. It's kind of like you're on your own to figure that out. I don't find that to be here. And for the past 10, 15, and I've been part of Traumatic Loss Coalition for 23 years, I have watched there to be growth in West Windsor-Plainsboro around how can we be prepared enough to help people heal and recover after tragedies happen. So the good news is you're invited here tonight to be a part of this. The terrible news is something terrible happened in your community. And it is time for conversation and healing. Certainly time for that. If you have lingering sadness, deep sadness, it disrupts your day. You've taken off from work. Maybe you haven't gone back to work. Maybe you're so scared you lock yourself in your house. Maybe you're really worried about waiting for that other thing to happen, because we get that way sometimes. That's not good for you. That's not healthy for you. There's no reason out here for you to react that way, but there's a very good reason for you from the inside, your own fears and worries, to respond that way. And what I think, even though that might not be the school's issue to solve, the school has a lot of resources and can refer you to a lot of resources to help. Don't suffer alone. Don't suffer silently. Don't allow your embarrassment to get in the way of you healing from this. And when I say healing from this, that doesn't mean you'll forget. It just means that emotionally, you're not stuck in the past, that you can move on and function for your sake and for your kids' sake, because that is the overall goal. Which brings me to this point, and then I want to open it up. My work is to work with schools, with teachers and support staff, moms and dads, around the issue of how do we counteract all the negative stuff that's going on in our culture For instance, kids who suffered coming out of COVID. For instance, families and kids who suffer because of what they hear that goes on either in the community, in the country, in the world, right? Because they have access to that, and it's upsetting. So my work is to be able to help healthy adults like you, moms and dads like you, staff like you, to be able to create what I call sanctuary for your children. Safe, sacred places. How do you do the best you can do in your home, inside your family, to create that sacred space so your children get relief from some of the chaos that happens out in the world? You can only do that if you really take care of yourself. I'll call it self-care. If you do not take care of yourself, this is not a prediction. I don't know you. I don't know your kids. But what I know is this. If parents are unhealthy, they have a real struggling time raising their kids to be healthy. And I'm not just talking physically, that's true, but I'm also talking emotionally. So how is it that you can pay attention to you, do for you, take care of your sleep? If you have lots of anxiety around this, are you going for walks in order to calm your body? For those of you that participate in religious practices, do you do that? Do you seek that kind of peacefulness? Because some of you do. For some of you who do yoga to take care of your body? Some mindfulness to take care of your body? And then to surround yourself with healthy people that can help you in those moments where you are more and more upset. There is a lot of natural healing that will happen. And for most of you, the natural healing will happen. For some of you, you may need a little bit more support for that. Final comment. Probably not my final comment. I always have trouble making a final comment. I typically begin when I'm with moms and dads or staff by saying good evening, and this is not a good evening. I can say welcome instead because I do mean that. Something moved you to come out of the safety and sacredness of your home, to come here and gather as a community, to hear some words perhaps that are comforting, to ask some questions so that you're not confused. I welcome you to be here to do that. If you're uncomfortable talking specifically about your own son, your own daughter, then say that it's a hypothetical child that you heard about. But I want to give any of you, each of you, all of you, an opportunity to say, yes, but George. Yeah, but you didn't touch on this. What is it that I didn't touch on that you need to get information on? Silence is okay, ma'am.
We can do something like that. So do we need to doubt ourselves to is it like something can force a good parent to be like that, which like these things are making us doubt ourselves, and that is why we are questioning everyone that we don't like, honestly speaking, I'm not able to grasp this fact, like whatever people are saying that is internal, because we knew this family especially very well. So we know that like it's very difficult for us to grasp this thing that yes, whatever they are saying that's true because we knew those people. So and this is the thing, like it's like honestly speaking, I'm not able to sleep these days properly because in the midnight I get up and please I like in the ring cameras I'm checking okay why this light on, why this car is slowing down in front of my door. So there's something going on. Like we are not like, at least I am not able to accept this fact that it was completely internal, because maybe we, I don't know, the picture we got for those people, that was completely different.
So let me summarize the dilemma. That if you had a personal relationship with the mom and dad and you knew them just as people, you can't comprehend that outcome based upon the people that you knew. And what that does is it just disrupts your whole internal belief system about what can I trust? Who can I trust? As a therapist, what I know is we all have a story. We all have a story that nobody else knows. Part of that is because we like to keep that private. Part of that is because perhaps we're carrying stuff with us that we know that people would judge us if they knew, so we keep it hidden and we keep it deep. What we do know is that your instincts, though, are good instincts. That mom and dad can be both. They can be the wonderful people that you knew and you walked the street with. They can be that. And at the same time, being upset in a moment and carrying out a terrible tragedy like this. Part of the reason why this hurts so much is because it's so personal and so close. If you read about this in a paper and it happened across the country, you would feel bad too, but it wouldn't upset your own sense of security. It's because you're trying to reconcile your experience of them and the outcome that you're told happened. There probably is not a good answer because the reason died with the family. The incident that provoked it died with the family. There wasn't an outside perpetrator that stirred this up. It came from inside that family. Now let's go to trusting your own instincts. Do I understand why you would then say, well, gee, who else am I misreading? Who else maybe is dangerous? Who else maybe is destructive? And what does that say about me? Like, how do I reassure my children if I'm doubting myself now? I think that doubt will linger. I think it will. Because your brain is trying to make sense of what happened based upon what you knew. And you can't. If a note was found with an explanation, that might make you feel a little better. If somebody said, oh, well, my experience was completely opposite of yours, this was my experience, but that's not the case. The issue is, for you, is your interpretation, your read, your understanding of who they were as a family in this community got blown up and destroyed because of what happened. I don't like for you the fact that you live with fear, you can't sleep, because that will be hurtful to you. It's going to wear your body down. It's going to take away from you being a mom that's why I stress the self-care. How do I get to the point? Now, for some, you may have to consult with your doctor. That may be necessary. If you're not eating, if you're not sleeping, if you're irritable, you can only do that for so long, and if it lingers for too long, then it's a sign that your whole system has been disrupted and needs to be calmed down with support. You will try to figure this out, because we try to make meaning out of this, right? We try to make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Based upon what we know, based upon the stories as they're out there in the community, this doesn't make sense. And therefore, it will cause disruption for you. I would like to believe that I could say the magic words that would make it all make sense for you and calm you. Can't. So the issue for you is, so let me take care of myself. Let me be as healthy as I can. Let me take care of my kids. Let's see over time whether I can get perspective, because that was just so disruptive to my sense of well-being and calm and sanity, because this sounds so crazy. It's human to do that. It's human to try to match what you felt you knew with what you heard or what happened. It's human to try to make that make sense. Our children try to do the same thing. How do I make this make sense? There are some times with us as adults, we can't. There's pieces missing that you'll never know because the story was inside of that house. That's where the story was, not in your relationship with either the mom or dad or the children. And I recognize I'm not giving you a whole lot of satisfaction, only trying to reassure you that what you're struggling with is a pretty typical struggle. Sir?
So, just piggybacking on what she said, I knew the family very, very well.
Okay.
So all of the things that you said, first of all, really appreciate you doing that because I think it reinforces some of the things that I've been thinking through the last 10 days.
Okay.
That same sense of insecurity, trust. I had that conversation with my wife. We kind of shrugged it off in 10 minutes. That's not the way to live life, meaning we have to keep on trusting people. We have to keep on living our life. So we had the conversation. We thought that maybe we'll have to have a higher standard of trusting people, but that's unachievable. Hence, we dismissed the idea and we moved on. I think the one thing that lingered me, and it pains me to say that, is we were good friends with the whole family, extremely good friends. The question becomes, what I think I'm missing, which you haven't touched upon, or at least if you have some thoughts around it, would be what could we have seen in the kids' behavior, right? Parents sometimes are very smart, right? They are adults. They are able to camouflage their instincts, behavior, what's growing up in their head. But is there a way, when you're friends with a family, are there kids that we can, if you meet somebody for a period of time, you know their habits.
Yes, there's a pattern. Mm-hmm.
Their patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there something in the kids that, not that I'm going to look at every kid with a different lens, but something that, some lessons or some words of wisdom that you can give us that can help us have a framework of thinking around it. So just some thoughts around it.
So the comment is a great comment. Like, how, in trying to make this make sense, we have to come to some understandings within ourselves. Either we're going to live in fear or we'll reground ourselves. But the question is, shouldn't we be able to, in innocent children, see some signs, symptoms of something that maybe is a reflection of what's going on in the family? Fair, right? That's a fair summary. I'm going to go out on a limb here because it's a really sensitive topic. I'm not asking for an acknowledgement. I'm not asking for you to raise your hand and say that's me. But what I do know is children also know not to create problems when there are problems going on in the family. So they suck it up. They don't tell a friend. They don't tell a teacher. They don't go to the nurse. Now, they may have belly aches. They may have headaches because of the stress. Kids are very loyal to the mom and dad. And sometimes, perhaps nobody in the room, mom and or dad might say, don't you tell anybody about what goes on in this house. Now, we know that's true in some families, and it's part of what I teach from the point of view of it destroys help seeking. So it's not like I'm really worried about my mom, I'm really worried about my dad. Children won't do that if, in fact, the loyalty is to keep the sanctity of the family and the image of the family intact. You would never know. Does that happen? Yes. Do children, one final comment, do children know that they're doing that? No. There's not an intent on their part to mislead other kids or other people. They simply know what's okay to say and what's not okay to say. Now, do I know that that went on in this family? I don't. But what I do know is that's not an uncommon dynamic within some families in which kids do not tell the inside story.
Yeah, but the
But yes, you could, and you know, so like I mentioned before, kids will either use the words or their behavior, right? So if there's a kid that's highly stressed, sometimes you'll find them in the nurse's office a lot because they got belly aches, because they internalize the stress. That could be a symptom. Why is that kid always in the nurse's office? It could be some kids might turn out to be bullies, right? Because they're aggressive. So you'll see that and say, gee, mom and dad they seem to be really nice people. What's going on with this kid? I haven't heard any of that any of the symptoms of that in any way. Now, if you take that on face value, then it makes the scenario even more puzzling and complicated. But when you work it backwards from the end result, that wasn't problem solving in a good way. So when we work it backwards, there's something there were some things there. And listen, I think it's unfair to the family for any of us to sit and do forensics and speculate, right? I think that's just unfair. But what we know is there wasn't a healthy resolution to whatever was going on. In fact, there was a very unhealthy resolution. Sir.
So my question is more about, we don't know what happened, we don't know why it happened. At some point, what happened will come out, and I think the chief talked about it. He said, what happened will come out, but why, the motive will never come out. So my question is, the kids, especially teenagers, they're almost adults. You know, whatever we tell them now works for them, but when it eventually comes out, you know, the emotional brain goes through the stages of grief and resolves itself, but the thinking brain would be like, what, we'll never know what happened here. So who can I trust, who can I not trust? So how do you resolve the thinking part of your brain, because we will never get to know what exactly was the motive here.
The parallel that I have in my experience is they're exactly the same questions that families have when one of their children takes his own life or her own life. How does that happen? It's not a thinking brain issue. I'm convinced of that. I don't know any more about the scenario than you do, but what I'm convinced about is there was an overwhelming emotional reaction that caused this incident to begin and to ripple. It wasn't thoughtful, because what I've been told is you knew the adults, and you would have said, but they're very reasonable, logical people. They're good problem solvers. They're really balanced. But emotionally, because I'm going to use your thinking brain, emotional brain, there was something going on emotionally that got beyond the thinking brain and could not be pulled back. And once it started moving, it continued to move. I'm going to draw a parallel here. I'll use some of my language. In spite of your experience with the family, there was an underlying vulnerability that didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't a bad day. Underlying vulnerability. And then, in order for the outcome to be, there's a stress event. I don't know what it was, but there's something that happened, that was said, that was done, that was thought about. A stress event that causes a shift emotionally, and then an unreasonable reaction.
Yeah, my question was more around how to bring closure to your own brain as a means of resilience, right? The emotional brain will go through its stages, you know, whatever, grief, anxiety, all that stuff. But for the thinking brain, how do you bring closure there? Because you will never really know.
Well, if you'll never really know,
You assume that, hey, this is most likely what happened, and bring closure, or I'm struggling here to see how to bring closure to that.
let me ask you a question, because this is a common term. What does bring closure mean to you? Be okay with it? I don't know that you'll ever be okay with it. What is closure?
I mean, closure is closure, right? Like in my mind, and I'm just giving a personal example, in my mind, all four were victims in one way or the other.
Okay,
I bring closure to my mind from that perspective.
okay,
I'm not going around trying to figure out what happened.
good,
All four were victims, one way or the other, right? Because I knew the family very well.
okay.
But the thinking brain is, okay, you know, is there a report that's going to come out eventually. We will never know the motive. So what exactly happened?
So the closure you're talking about is emotional closure?
No, not emotional closure, but thinking, the analytical closure, right? Like, what exactly went down, right?
That's going to be the unknown that you, for the rest of your life, is going to carry with you.
I'm looking to bring closure to that part of my brain which says, forget about it, either assume something, bring it closure, and just move on, or is there some other way to kind of.
I wish I had a trick. I wish I had a way to say, do this and that'll be better. Because if there are 50 people in the room, they're wrestling with the same thing, maybe at a different level, because if you knew the family personally, because you can't make it make sense. It's not your experience of the family.
Right. So one of the things that helped in my case, right?
Yeah.
The way I deal with these issues, I read about it. And there are some good books on this. And
What's the topic of the books?
the book is, and I'm just giving an example. It's
Yeah.
The Perversion of Virtues. It's written by John Boyner.
The Perversion of Virtues?
Yes.
Okay.
So it helps you understand. It's a study of, when these kind of situations happen, what exactly could be the causes, the signs, the symptoms, and all these things. So it helps you understand what problems are.
So that gives you intellectual closure.
It gives you perspective. So it gives you intellectual closure, and that's the closure.
Intellectual or emotional?
Intellectual. I think the emotional is right after. Intellectual is not.
Can I come back and ask you another question? Because it may be helpful for the rest of the folks in the room. You began by talking, early on you were talking about your teenagers. Is there an outstanding issue there that we can talk about because others have teenagers?
So I think the way kids react to it are different.
Yes?
Some people, and to build off what you said, right? Some people are saying, hey, I used to send my kids to the house.
Okay.
I had no clue what was going on there.
Right.
They're questioning that part. Where do I send my kids? Do I really know the family? So that's that uncertainty, but hopefully things resolve and you can't live your life that way. But there are other questions about my teenagers not really saying a lot about it. And there's all sorts of news out there. God bless the media and everyone, and which makes it so difficult to have a conversation. But are they addressing it, or they're just bottling it down somewhere? More importantly, eventually it will come out what happened, and that might raise more questions, right?
You seem to have a certainty about that, and I don't know that that's going to be, I don't know that that's true.
Because the chief said we'll never know the motive.
Right. Because motive is about intent, right? That's about what goes on inside of us.
So I don't know, this has never happened, right? So we don't know when the final report comes out to what details
Correct.
are documented. There's an example in Plainsboro before in a rental community where there was a similar, not a similar thing, but
Another incident.
And there's some details that were released. In that case, the perpetrator was out there. But I don't know, and maybe we have to ask law enforcement, but in situations like this, what kind of details are revealed in the final report?
Well,
Can that trigger and people who are closely associated with
what I heard the chief say is that there will be a final report, but there will also be a final press release. So some goes public and some is within the sanctity of the report. And I also want to say this. If you knew every detail, would you feel better or not? At some point, it's kind of like my sadness, my heart hurts. I got to take care of me, take care of my kids. I will remember that family fondly forever. But oh my goodness, I don't want to be inside of that house at the moments that all those things happened, because that would terrorize me. At some point, it's kind of like, better I don't know, better my kids don't know.
me personally, the least amount of detail, the better. Because
I think that's
closely associated with it, but I don't know what audiences need to be catered to by those reports, right? Some people are not curious like what's happening. But me personally, I don't want anything else to come out, right?
got it.
We moved on. Don't come back and
Because that, if you've moved on, it sounds like there's been some healing, right? But then it's like ripping the scab off all over again. It takes you back and you've got to do the same thing again. Not healthy for you guys. Trigger questions. How old's your daughter? How old? Okay.
minutes what she knew, which was almost nothing. And just to have any detail about what happened, these are very smart kids. They're going to start to feel it more if certain details come out.
Well, what she's talking about is her 16-year-old daughter, right? And what happens when the details come out? Hopefully.
She's getting at what audience will this report cater to, and we don't want any details. I don't, personally. And I don't want my daughter.
Chief, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so basically, we're not going to give any type of significant details in the press release and the report. If we do discover a motive, I think that's what everybody's kind of curious about, to some degree. But we're not going to release what we don't know. We're not going to surprise the press release. What we're going to do is just put the outcome.
We're just going to put what the outcome of the investigation is. And like you said, we don't want to elicit any more feelings, but sometimes there is a need to know. And there's a right to know with the public from a public entity about what we discover. So it's a very difficult situation because there's a 50-50 part of it where 50% of the people want to know and 50% of the people don't want to know. And we don't want to elicit these feelings again, but at the same time, we want to let and reassure people that, again, isolated incident, this is why it occurred potentially. Hopefully it's I hate to say this, but it's a teaching lesson for individuals, potentially. But we won't get into any of the significant details, just kind of what the potentially the why and maybe a little bit of what occurred, so without causing any fear or concern. And I think it's the effort of the press release is to reduce the fear and concern of the community and proceed with the healing process. Yes, and I would be with the prosecutor's office in conjunction with us as well. So,
Chief, is there about a timeline on that, usually?
So what we were told is about 8 to, believe it or not, 16 weeks. So we're looking at a few months from now. And again, it may be something so simple as putting it out on our social media pages in conjunction with the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office. It may not even be in the press itself. It may be just something focused to locality. So
I wouldn't want anybody to think next week you're going to have more information. That's likely not going to happen.
no, it's we have some time. Probably another at least month or so.
Sir, you had a comment or a question?
Yes. So, as our audience said, his family was very good family, very gregarious, particularly interacting with the rest of the community. So, and we are very good, close community that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel in a way, somewhere community, it is a little bit failure of community as well, maybe, but that's a separate issue. The reason I am talking to you is when I am neighbor to this family.
Okay.
So kids were actually knowing children as well as adults very close.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, very gregarious. So a lot of kids would be closely knowing this family. So when the outcome comes out, because presently maybe we have told something to children that this is something happened and then moved on. But now when the outcome comes out that something internal to the family or something self-harm kind of thing or something, I don't know. I don't want to speculate. But children, how that kind of conclusion can be accepted by children. Sometimes they will feel that this could be another option in life, their own life. So because it's very normal family for them, right? For us, all of us.
So close neighbor friends, if more detail comes out, worried about how the children will process that, conclusions that they will reach. The big fear is, might some kids conclude that's the way to solve problems in their lives? my response reaction to that is that as time goes on, there is healing. As time goes on, there is perspective. As time goes on, and there's reasonable conversation, it's part of healing. I don't believe, unless you're worried about your child, that any kid would conclude, oh, I want to do that. It doesn't work that way. Even the issue, and I keep bringing this back to suicide only because it has a similar path, is the fact that all of us are hardwired to live, but sometimes something compromises that. Apparently that's what went on. Something compromised the survival instinct. Rare. There would be a natural fear that, yeah, it's rare, but could happen again. I can't say it can happen again, but this is about risk management, and my sense is the risk is very, very low. I think you should protect your kids from some of the detail. I think you should answer questions, and I haven't heard that yet. My kid keeps asking X, Y, or Z. I want to hear that. Maybe that's what your hand was about. Because I think that that's where our work is. Our work is how not to make it make sense, because we can even say, it doesn't even make sense to me as your dad or me as your mom. I don't think that family intentionally fooled me, and I think I'm good with people. But something went on that we probably will never know the story. How are we going to heal from that sadness? I think that's where we are.
And those questions are being asked, I think, in every family in that community.
Yes.
My high school were asking the same question.
Yes.
Can you do this?
Yes.
6-year-old girl.
Yes.
We are all facing those questions.
Yes.
We're all here for help. And I don't.
Take your time.
I don't have any answers
There are no answers.
because I myself don't know.
Right. Exactly. I think that that's the sacredness of the relationship between you and your kids, to be able to see that response and to say, I can't figure it out. We simply need to stay open with each other. We need to talk with each other, because I cannot figure it out. I don't know anything as your dad that would lead me to believe that I understand that. That's a really healthy message. Ma'am.
My hand was more about when other people are speaking, I can't.
Oh,
I hear your response, so I'm kind of.
I was trying to summarize that. Would it be better if...
I pick up one question. I did know this family, and we've also had that 8th grader that happened last year, right? I'm gonna try to be as loud as I can. Like, I have teenagers that are teenagers. They hide in their room. They sit in their room. You knock on the door. They don't come out, right? They're not very vocal about any stresses or anything going on. But knowing an individual in a family, like 2 parents that were so involved, that were so vocal, and seeing this happen to adults makes me worry more about my children, who are teenagers who are not, I mean, it is the time where they're not that vocal, but like, if I don't see, like, how do I see red flags in that?
I don't want your worry to be debilitating, because that takes away your power of being vigilant and inquiring with your kids. I do think it's okay to coax kids out of the room. Isolation is not good. It doesn't mean they're going down a path of self-destruction. There's no conclusion of that.
To get them out of the room, we just have to shut their Wi-Fi off. They really come out quickly once you do that.
Well, there you go. Every parent's going to go home, shut their Wi-Fi off. Because it's really important to be connected. And you can say things like, I'm worried. I care about you. And when I can't lay eyes on you, when I don't hear you sharing with me, and I'm not asking you to tell me everything that goes on in your life, I think those kinds of connections are really important. That might help to assuage a bit of your worry. Because it's hard being a mom and dad under regular circumstances, let alone these circumstances. There was another hand somewhere. Ma'am? Yeah.
We planned things all last year, but we worked together. Right? And it's kind of hard, you know, I think most of us are volunteers and we do stuff in the school and kind of continue those roles as they together, basically. And it affects so many different parts of our lives. We know kind of friend, we had the same age daughter, they would hang out together as Amy and they would get bike office. So you kind of just like, it blends all of your things that you do together as a person, as a mother, as a family member. I really don't just say, like, people say, how are you guys doing? I don't know, community. And I'll say, in my head and my heart hurt, but you kind of just keep going on. You keep doing things like you normally would. And it's just kind of hard when those things, just because I knew them from last year, I got to know them very well. The things that we would do together, it's just kind of hard to keep doing them hard. It's, you think of them.
And it's uncomfortable.
I don't think so much uncomfortable, it's just that you're in the same role, doing the same things, moving along the same way, but you still kind of, like, I didn't expect to do this, but, like you're talking to people to ask you, and all of a sudden you start rolling up. You go through life and you keep doing things, and you try to do as you normally would, and then you don't have, and we live in the same community as well. You see a lot of neighbors here on this side. So you see them around the neighborhood, walking around, like, it just seems like their lives, they're not here anymore, but we still keep doing the same as they were doing. I don't really know how to question, but it's just kind of been like, it comes up and then goes away. And it's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And the word that stuck with me as you were speaking was linger. I feel that's what's kind of happening, and it's not that far removed, but it's like almost everything keeps going on, but you still keep. And sometimes there are people who know them closer than you would know them, but at the same time, you just feel that intense sort of like wave roller.
I think that what you would see is typical emotional responses, right? That you go, that's part of the grieving process. But what I would not want anybody to do is to tarnish the image of your personal relationship with them. That was good. This should not take that away. And then there's a second part of that. How do you continue to do the work to honor them? Because they would have continued to do the work.
Carl had arranged a community get together, and I spoke to other neighbors, and they said they would have been here. Like, they would have been the first people that would have been part
Yes.
of our
If it had happened to somebody else. Yes. I think there's a risk in taking away the goodness of who they were and in your heart still are because of your relationship with them. And that would be a terrible thing to do if you try to erase all of that. But I also think that part of our healing is by doing. How do we honor? How do we remember? Even in your own personal lives, when somebody close to you dies, the hard part is how do you let them go but hold on to them, right? How do you do both of those things? How do you hold on to the same family? How do you remember the good times? How can you get to the point where you will smile and laugh again because of something that you remember happened, and at the same time always have this longing, this lingering of, but I wish I knew because it doesn't make sense to me. There's no amount of words that's going to make it make sense.
So I just have a comment too, that today when I came home, my wife she's cleaning up and she found a receipt with Solar bought something for her. So she wanted to see, she was emotional. So the only thing that I thought at the point you made is just to get over this, we just talked about it for like 5 minutes. She was emotional, I was there, just had a conversation, we shifted, not to shove it under the rug.
Correct.
And something that you said, I'm just thinking, every bits and pieces of life, we will intersect for the next few months with incidents. And at least the way I'm trying to problem solve this a little bit, is I have to move on in some ways, but I also have to cherish, but I have to kind of keep the dialogue open. And one thing that I really, really loved, I personally loved, and both me and my wife, was the mailer that came out from the school that said how to talk to your child with some examples. I just absolutely loved it because I'm like, I can be very straightforward, blunt sometimes, but in this matter, I was like, I'll open the dialogue, but I learned something from this and kind of move on. So that's something that I've been practicing to get get over my grief, but it's hard. Just the sheer.
There's nothing about this that's easy or comfortable. Nothing. And I do expect that sometimes, oh, I'm feeling better. All of a sudden, I'm not feeling better. Oh, I'm feeling better. Expect that. That's the cycle that we go through. There was a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, sorry. This is a regional school district, as we know, and not all the students live in the same community as this family. And my question is, what would you recommend for parents of children who don't have a cell phone, who don't have as much access to the internet, who wanted to preemptively tell their child something before they got on the bus so as to prevent them from hearing it at school? Would you recommend that parents do that? If yes, how would you suggest that they can, in the K-5 realm?
Yeah, my experience always says that kids do better when they hear it directly from mom and dad, because they need to hear it from a trusted adult without elaboration. Something sad really happened. We're not sure of the details, but this is the outcome. Absolutely to do that. I'd rather moms and dads are the messengers on that than the school folks. School folks can do reinforcement and they can reassure and they can support. But yes, whether you're elementary, middle, or high school, I always prefer that moms and dads have that kind of openness with their kids. Somehow I didn't respond in a way that satisfied you. I just misread it. You're thinking. Okay. Parents are the best. They're the best. It's hard.
How do you, so for a first grader who's good friends with Amy,
Yeah.
as friends, we're trying to comfort the mom
Yeah.
of the first grader, so is there anything we can do? Like we thought, oh, maybe we could get together like a cooking kit or something like that as outsiders trying to soothe or help
Soothe is a good word.
this first grader, but we don't really know what she's going through. I guess maybe is there ways that as adults we're trying to help not only the parent, but the 6-year-old friend, really good friend, who they would see each other almost at school and also just out in the community. Is there ways for us as adults to help those little ones?
I think not to overplay it. I think not to talk about it and bring it up all the time. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? That's not good. Because kids get to the point, particularly at 6, where they have enough information where it just settles them enough. They may worry about their mom because their mom's upset, or their dad because their dad's upset, but their soothing and reassurance is enough. They do not relate to life and or death like a 14-year-old would or an adult would. So just enough. And then you wait for them to come and ask another question, or you wait for them to be weepy all the time. That's a sign that something's going on. But we shouldn't overplay our hands with our little ones at all. Just at all. As a matter of fact, and this, please, I'm not intending to be harsh, they won't remember this when they're 16. They may remember the mom and dad's reaction, remember that time, but they're not going to carry this with them like older children and teenagers and adults will. It's just not how our brains are wired. Yes?
So our teenager was close to the river.
Yeah?
They often used to do things together.
Yeah?
So some of the activities she doesn't want to do anymore because they have become maybe triggers for her to
Mm-hmm.
talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's kind of, withdrawing from a few things, which I'm assuming is temporary.
Temporary and good. Now, it may not be temporary, but it's a good thing. They know what they need and what's too overwhelming.
So how do you maybe, are they resilient as a 15-year-old? Or how do you build some resilience in them? How do you get them to become more open? Because she maybe was afraid of hanging out with little ones because, it's just something she has in her mind at the moment.
I think right now, a wait is good because it's 10 days. Right? It's raw. And what kids will do is they will settle back into a routine, hopefully a healthy routine, their old routine. They'll be able to talk about it without tearing up or emoting. Doesn't mean they don't care as much. It means that the healing has happened. So just kind of be cautious with your worry about that. Don't force them to do things that they choose not to do. Resiliency is a thing that you typically don't do following a tragedy. It's usually a part of the way your kids have been raised to be independent and self-sufficient, and they have chores they do, and they help to problem solve. That's all about resiliency. Sometimes parents do too much for their kids or don't hold them accountable. Then resiliency is not a big strong suit. That's not good for the kid, and the bumps will be harder to get through. But sometimes patience, I'm here, we can talk, just checking in. Am I annoying you by checking in? Yes, leave me alone, right? And you say, got it, I understand that. But don't think I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to circle back because I'm worried. This is hard for all of us. I know it's hard for you. That kind of empathy is powerfully important for your children.
So my question is that the triggers that I feel like she's showing right now, are they likely to kind of subside?
Yes. For healthy kids, they will likely subside. You can't rush healing. You can't rush grief. And everybody does it at a bit of a different speed. Right? What you can do for her is to show her that you take care of you. That's really important because their security is you, right? That goes for all of you. Your children's security is you and how you manage you. Because they're always watching like, oh my God, if mom goes down, if dad goes down, what happens to me? So take care of yourself, be patient with them. If you have a specific question, call the school and talk to the counselor. Please do that. Please use that resource.
My question is, what do we as a community learn from this? How do we make sure something like this does not happen?
I wish there was a way.
There has to.
Because we don't know enough about what prompted this, what created this. If you did, then you could say, well, we won't do that anymore. We won't have that anymore. Sometimes events happen that we don't understand enough, and there's not enough steps to do to prevent it. What we do is we lower risk by taking care of one another, checking in on one another. Not assuming, there's just a hand here, not assuming that this is going to repeat itself, because that's a horrible burden for you to carry. That's a terrible burden. And the likelihood, and there again, this is risk management. The likelihood is this will never happen again. But when you're in it and living it, it just doesn't feel that safe. There was a hand.
As far as for teachers, developmentally, when a kid is in 5th grade,
Yeah.
about 10,
Yeah.
I feel confused about how that age would process it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not, in middle school, which is that time I remember much better, right? And they're not so young. And I just feel confused about what kind of, what is their experience.
Well, their experience of it is going to be individual based upon their experiences within their family, right? Their sense of safety, their sense of security. We can't assume that all 5th graders, because they're 10, are going to respond or think this way. So it's very individual. You do better if you knew, if let's say you have a 5th grader in mind, what were they like before this incident? You can compare that. That'll let you know whether or not they are kind of isolating, they are irritable. That's different, so you know that there's something going on. It's about 8 years old where death becomes final in kids' minds. Younger kids don't understand the finality of it. Younger kids are likely to say things like, in a family where a parent dies, the surviving mom or dad sit down and they say that mommy died or daddy died, and they say, oh, but when are they coming home? Right? Because there's not a finality there. 9, 10, they begin to understand that, maybe because a pet died, a grandparent died, right? They begin to have experiences. So what I think it's really important to keep in mind is, who knows the child well? What was the child like prior? What's the child like now? Is this within the recovery, the normal grieving recovery? But there's not such an absolute that you can measure it, that you can put a number on it. Ma'am? Mm-hmm. Do you know why? Do you know? I'm going to use his language. Do you know why, quote, dad did it? Do you know?
Because he's thinking that it's for husband to take care of his family.
I understand. Got that. And you don't. And you. What you don't want to do is you don't want to sabotage that, right? If within your family and within your culture, the dad figure is the one who protects. You don't want to destroy that. But the honest answer is, we don't know. Something went on that we don't know. Sometimes we just don't know. If I hear more, I'm willing to share it with you. But right now, we just have to make sure that we're okay. That's really the answer to that. Don't get trapped in believing you've got to have the definitive answer. Who in the room has the definitive answer? You see the pain in this room. Nobody has a definitive answer because it's an unknown. It's about motive. It's about intent. Unless there's some other kind of evidence that's going to come out as a result of the investigation, you're not going to know. That's hard. But this is all hard.
I have two kids. One is 9,
Mhm.
and one will be 18 on this 23rd. So completely 9 years. And my 10 years, like he was friend with this kid who was 10 years old. So, but we didn't share anything with him. We didn't tell him that who was the kid. He's still not aware of which kid died. So he just.
Do they go to school together? Do they go to school together?
Not the class, but school together. So,
Bus together?
bus, I'm not sure. So we didn't tell him anything. So when next day he went to school, so he came up and he said, like, Mama, today teacher told us that there is some kid of 5th grade. My son is in 4th grade. So he told me that, Mama, teacher said that there is a 5th grader who died in Plainsboro. So, Mama, do we know that kid? I said, Beta, I don't know who was that kid, but it is really sad.
Good for you. That's a good answer.
So
really
he
sad.
said that, then I asked him, so is there anything else your teacher told you or anybody?
Great question.
Friends? So he said that, Mama, no, they didn't tell me anything, but I think, and I asked him that, what do you think? Why they didn't tell you anything? So he said that maybe they think that it was not age appropriate for me. So then he asked me, Mama, do you think that maybe it was not age appropriate me? That's why they didn't tell me. I said yes. That is the reason I feel. So, but my worry is, okay, he knew that kid by name, by face.
Yeah.
So he's going that bus. Where are the other kids? And every kid has different nature. My kid is like he don't get too much into details of anything. He's like his happy-go-lucky kind of kid. So if he hear more about these things from the other kids,
He will.
so I don't know whether he's going to come to me to ask the question.
Apparently he is, because he came to you before with that conversation. It sounds like you have that kind of relationship with him.
So, but that time I said that I didn't know that kid. And now if he will come to know all the details or any more details, because what I understand is you don't know that it's a whole family involved. You just know there's a 5th grader, something happened. So if he will come to know more details from the other students, so is he going to question me or is he going to doubt me that my parents didn't tell me anything, that he was my friend? it was the family, like they used to come to our birthday parties. So, like these are the sometimes I am worried.
You worry about, sure, I get that. So number one, I really don't like it when anybody says it was a fifth grader at that school. It just raises too many questions, even among adults, like what fifth grader was it? So I think, to be honest, in terms of these are the people who died, and that's tragic, and I'm really sad about that, I think that's a good thing to do. I think that's honest. If he were to say, did you know all the details? The reality is, no. But what we do know for sure is we're all sad as a community that that happened. We know that for sure. So we're going to stay focused on how do we support one another, because that family had a tragedy happen.
After 2 days, I appreciate the school efforts. I really appreciate whatever the school is doing. So next day he came very happy and he said that, Mama, yes, today my teacher sent me and a few more kids, 3-4 more kids, to meet therapy dogs.
Ah,
So,
very cool.
Yeah, and that dog he started talking, he got 3 pictures of the therapy dogs, and this therapy dog was very nice. He sat on my lap and he was very excited. So he said that, Mama, therapy dogs I really like, but I think that my teacher may be thinking that I'm sad. That's why she sent me to the therapy dog. But I really want to meet the therapy dog every day. So
I think you should buy him his own therapy dog. And then it'll be resolved.
he was like, okay, if I look sad, I will go to meet and explain the therapy. He's still like, he was like a little bit in doubt that, okay, I had fun meeting the therapy dog.
And it felt good.
Yeah, that was good. But maybe she thought that I'm sad.
And then, well, but it begs the question, are you? No, I'm not. Good for you. I'm glad you're not sad. End of conversation. It'll end there. Kids won't continue to keep it going. They just want to connect with you, affirm them. Are you feeling sad? What was it about the dog that made you happy? Okay, dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. Right? It's to normalize the relationship, because their little brains and their little hearts, they don't need all that we need. They don't go through the same machinations that we go through.
What about the teenager kid? He didn't even ask me any question about this thing. And I'm sure he knows everything about what's going on. But he didn't come to us. He didn't ask us anything.
I think it's fair, though, for you to say, hey, listen, I noticed that you haven't asked anything about the tragedy that happened. Do you have any questions? I think that's fair for a mom and dad to do. If he says no, accept that. Right? Because kids, everybody is not going to feel what you feel. And that's why one of the first comments of it, don't put your fears on top of your children. Don't put your heartaches on top of your children. Let them be them through this whole thing. Yes?
I don't know the family much, but I met Sonal a few times in parties. That evening when I came to know, I told my 11-year-old, because he will listen in school next day, and immediately he broke down, saying, I know, he told the girl's name, I don't know. He said he plays with them in the park, and they played a community event together with the boy. He's 1 year younger. He told me, I know that lady too. I meet her in the park, and it was unconsolable. And I have an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old. My 16-year-old got texts from other
They will.
with a lot of rumors, and both of us thought, because the younger one is upset, we are not going to tell him anything. But we told him in the bus, if you hear anything, I wanted, even though it's hard for me, I wanted to tell you, the first person.
So good.
And I reminded him, I lost my sister when few years back, 5-6 years back. I told him, you lost your aunt, and he said, I'm just 4 or 5. I remember very little. But this is literally yesterday or day before. I play every day in the park. So literally I feel more close to this, and
Sure.
how we will handle this. And I had personal losses, so I know how to handle this situation. So my older one told him, ask mom, she knows how to handle this. But Handling a personal loss for health reasons or other circumstances is different. But what I heard outside, parents harming their children, is hard to explain.
I don't think you have to explain
No,
that.
I didn't explain. I said some accident happened. Everyone gone. Then next day he told me, Mom, I heard horrible stories in school. If you are my older son, if you know anything, if he's telling you something, I don't care what happened. I just lost somebody. That's what is bothering me. You can tell me, I'll take it, even though how hard it is. But I'm not going to tell him if something comes out too. I'm not going to tell him because with my experience, I know children forget. Healing, it takes time.
Yes, it does.
But time definitely helps.
It does. As long as you continue to support and check in.
As a child, I lost one of the parents when I was 16. Someone told me at the time, healing happens and time really helps. That is true. You don't have to give all the details.
Correct.
But children also forget. That I can say with personal experience.
And each of you can say to your children now, I was at a meeting tonight, police chief spoke, there are no details for us to know. All we know is we are so sad that this happened and we lost these good people. So why don't we spend our energy being sad until, and the grief will not go away. It subsides. It gets smaller. So it sounds like you played that out perfectly with two children at different ages. Good for you. Don't lay your stuff on your kids.
My older one came and told me, Mom, he plays volleyball with us in the park. I can't believe this. And I said, yeah, these things happen. You just have to be strong.
And you can't believe it.
Try not to affect your mind and see if you have an issue, you should open up, you should talk.
Good for you.
To that extent, I talked too much. They had to say, Mom, we are good. you're getting too emotional about this. We are good. We will even talk to you.
That part of that's resiliency. Part of it, it's kind of like they feel it, they watch you, they listen, they try to make sense. But they're 8 or they're 16 and they move on in their life, right? And they need assurance that things are going to be okay. We're going to be all right. This is terribly sad. We're going to be fine.
I'm thinking it might be a good time to.
You can see that there are common threads here. Lingering sadness, tears that are getting ready to flow, all okay. You do not have to be strong and stoic. You can be you. You can be real. This incident provokes tears. It's also okay, although it drives you crazy, to say, I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't heard anything that I can be definitive on. I would rather you as a family, with yourselves and with your children, focus on how are we going to heal from this rather than we need to figure this out. No, you don't. You don't. This is not about this family anymore. God bless them. It's not about them. It's about you and recovery. It's about you and healing so that you can recover your life and then remember them in the ways that you need to and want to remember them. If it gets too much for you, seek out some professional support. This is perfect for that. If it doesn't subside, if it's too disruptive, seek out some professional support. How do you do that? Go to your physician. Say, this is overwhelming me. What can I do? Call a school counselor. This is overwhelming me. What can I do? You will get good advice, and gradually you'll get to a point where it's a terrible, terrible memory that you'll hold on to, but your heart won't ache as much. I hope you weren't disappointed by not having more definitive answers. This is a human condition that's just baffling. But your well-being is really important. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this with you. Thanks.
I trust that George delivered what I said at the beginning. He's just one of the kindest souls and is incredibly real at helping us process and think through tragedy and grief. So we're going to conclude at this time, but as George indicated, we'll stick around. I just want to encourage parents, if the questions arise, there's resources in the district, right? And if we don't have the the answers, and we're not going to have many of the answers, but if we don't have the direct way to, we have resources to reach out to. We have colleagues that we work with. Our counselors are incredible. They're remarkable human beings, and they're incredibly trained. We also have partnerships in district with UBHC, University Behavioral Health Center. We have 3 clinicians from Rutgers that are on staff with us that support our schools, right? So they're full-time counselors that work to support families and students with mental health concerns and in tragedy. So we do have additional resources here in district for support. And then we have tremendous partners in the field that we've cultivated over years. So just please know that if you have questions, reach out, ask for help. You're not in this alone. And part of the resiliency is the importance of connection and community. That means that your relationships in the community, your friendships, your work with organizations and charity, and continue to support one another. If you see someone is struggling, reach out for help. Reach out and we will help guide and try to figure out how to assist, whether it's through an outside resource, through a connection to a counselor, to a referral. But one of the reasons we have UBHC is to help us with those things. Your conversations, if you ever need to have with them, become HIPAA privacy, and there's direct relationships with them, and they can help guide through the healthcare system and confidentially, right? So there are resources in district, just please know that. And with that, we'll end tonight, and we'll stick around for anyone that needs to or wants to come up and ask questions. Thank you so much for coming out. Have a great evening.